I think at the end of the day, if you're in the marketing business and you're selling a marketing service, what's your competition, right? What are your clients choosing if they don't choose you? That's what I would want to talk about with my client.
Welcome to The Deep Dark, a business podcast where we ask seasoned minds to excavate their history, pulling out the best insights, the hardest moments, and yes, golden epiphanies. Somewhere in the stories and laughs, we all get a little smarter and feel a little better about our own business ventures. Remember, if it didn't hurt, it doesn't count. Your hosts are Chris Lyon and Tim Douglas at the Fidelis Creative Agency. So strap in and get ready as we plunge once again into The Deep Dark.
On this episode of The Deep Dark, we're joined by Nadav Mer, a serial entrepreneur responsible for starting, growing, and selling businesses in the IT and specialty coffee industries. Prior to becoming a professor, Nadav was a founder and owner of Morning Bell Coffee Roasters located in Ames, Iowa. Nadav exited Morning Bell by converting a business from a sole proprietorship to Iowa's first employee-owned cooperative. As you might assume, sitting down with some freshly brewed coffee would be an appropriate way to enjoy this episode of The Deep Dark.
All right. My name is Nadav Mer. So excited to be here with Chris, the whole team at Fidelis. Yeah. We're going to talk about opportunities to do the right thing and knowing when you can see that opportunity. I
love that. Opportunities to do the right thing. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
To The Deep Dark. Yeah, as I throw out that radio voice there for a minute. Man, we were just having a great talk before we started, and it seems like you've got to do some exciting things, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, all our best stuff is now behind us, Chris. Now we're
no
right
worry.
Before we start recording.
Oh, don't worry. I've got an elephant memory. I'll bring it back in there. But what I'd love you to do is tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, kind of set that stage. You got your irons in the fire in a couple different places. So let us know what that's all about.
So right now I am teaching at Texas A&M. I teach business and marketing stuff in the agricultural economics department in the Ag College. And it's a really good fit for me. And I get to teach management. I get to teach marketing. I get some very big classes, some very small classes.
Right.
But it's really living a dream that I've always had to teach business.
Awesome.
And, I got there in a pretty circuitous, long route. But it's filling my bucket, and it's a party.
People really don't realize what a great business school the School of Agriculture is.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of a secret.
Is really has some amazing folks there, amazing students, amazing profs working there, and there's a sales program
that's second to none, and people brag about it all the time.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fun stuff happening. So even though it's in the guise of ag, right? And it's not this general business startup-y vibe. It actually suits me very well.
Good.
So folks have more dirty boots. And, coming from the coffee business myself, the ag fit was really good.
Right. It's not Wharton by any means, right? Yeah. But I tell you, there's a lot to be learned. But that's that. Man, I love to hear you say that because you also have other stuff going on, right? You're a businessman.
So we've sold our businesses. And I say we, my wife and I.
Yeah.
So... yeah, I can take you back. Let me take you back in time.
Take me, man.
And tell you back, bring it back to me being in Rhode Island, growing up as a kid in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And really having the dream to play live music. So I loved metal, punk. And when I was...
So you're a metal guy. Now what kind of metal? You got to tell me.
I was going to say, I started with metal, but it's been a minute. But there's definitely still bands that I like. So not that they're in my rotation, but I like the Iron Maiden album, Killers.
Oh, yeah, my first concert.
I think mine too.
Yeah, man, it was Iron Maiden.
Mine was Iron Maiden and Anthrax.
That's right, man. I can remember it and I can remember the big old Iron Maiden floating over. And then I remember not too long ago I was watching that Where Are They Now? Did you see where the lead singer for Iron Maiden went? You can fact check this later. He went to go work as an executive for British Airways, if not the CEO eventually. But yeah. Man,
it's amazing.
So you're an Iron Maiden guy, big hair band guy.
I started off really wanting to play music. So at that point, I was like, this is going to be my world. Right. I'm going to be a rock star. So I had long hair, was playing guitar so many hours. So I started playing concerts around Rhode Island when I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
First club shows. And here I show up, I was like, I could go to the bar. It was a wild time.
Yeah.
So I really cut my teeth on playing live music. And that was always my dream. Same when I started college. I only wanted to play music.
So you were a guitarist, or what were you doing?
I was a guitarist primarily. Right. So I played also ska and reggae music that I got into.
Did you?
But my first job out of college was with a band from Providence called The Agents. So this is back in '99.
Okay.
They were signed, touring the U.S. So it was always my dream to play for a signed band. So I got the phone call. And I got the gig to be a guitarist with a signed band and tour with them.
That's awesome.
And it was incredible. You know, it was one of these things that you dream of as a kid. And all of you on the podcast
Long
don't
hair,
see
leather pants, all the babes up there. Yeah, got you, man.
you know, it was something like that. But it was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And, you know, if I hadn't had that experience, I'd be one of these guys with a ponytail in the back, all bald on top, still looking for that feeling. So it was really good that I had that experience and played a lot of concerts for thousands of people. And right. So that, you know, that entertainer part of me was done. And I've played a lot of music since then. And I'm actually looking always for folks to play with here. Every time I move, I kind of have to figure out who am I going to play with, because I still play music and have played with a lot of different folks. So that was the first time where I was like, I've had this big dream and I got it done. What's next? So after that band folded, I started studying for my MBA at the University of Rhode Island.
Okay.
And I had this next dream, which was to have my own business. So I grew up in a small business family. My parents still own small businesses in Rhode Island. So I knew that this was a path that I wanted to take. So I got my MBA and I went to work for American Power Conversion. APC was a big employer in Rhode Island at that point, and they make battery backup systems. So this is the early 2000s. There's no cloud. If you have a small business and you have servers that you need to run your emails and whatever other programs you have, you need to have backup power. So it was a very big business. They had about $2 billion in sales, you know, in the year or so that I was there. So I really learned that business and the data center power business. And then saw an opportunity to start a business selling those products. So that was my first business, 2006.
So you took the leap from the W-2 world to the 1099 world, and you're on your way.
2006.
Okay.
And I worked from home. It was just me. It was a drop ship kind of business. I had hookups to get leads from customers who wanted to buy these things, and I had a network of distributors that I would work with to have these units drop shipped. Some of them would be multiple pallets at a time, right? And customers all over the place. So I was doing pretty good. I was making money. Fast forward a few years, stuck at home, bored.
Bored. No team.
No team, but also nobody to talk to. No talk.
No energy.
At that point in my life, I thought I was an introvert.
Self-imposed COVID restrictions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I learned in those years that I am not an introvert.
Yeah.
And that's what led me to dream about another business that I could do at the same time that I sell batteries, which led me to coffee. So in 2011, we started our first coffee roastery. When I say we, it's really my wife who had to put up with all my dreams and chaos.
And you're still in Rhode Island at this time?
We were in Gainesville, Florida.
Oh, okay.
So we moved to Gainesville in 2006 for my wife to do her doctorate.
Okay.
And I saw her starting to go through that process. And I had dreamed already at this point of teaching business. But I saw her go through the PhD process, and I said, I'm good with that. No interest in getting a PhD. Yeah. If I ever teach business, it'll be because of my experience.
Right.
So
the best education by never having a thought of your own, go get your PhD. Right. Right.
But it's a grind.
It's a grind.
I give a lot of respect to the PhD students that I know in my department. And, you know, I really think that it's the percentage of hope that you can see, right? It's like the door is open just a crack for a lot of those folks. Right. So you really have to be a superstar to do it. And but I give them a lot of credit for the intellectual curiosity and the grit that it takes. For those students. But yeah, so I saw my wife go through it. I said this wasn't for me, but we started with a homemade coffee roaster in my backyard. Okay. It was my first roaster, and we got some wholesale accounts in Gainesville. Started doing the farmer's market, and that was great fun because then I had a coffee shop one day a week. Yeah. And I had to, you know, sell cups of coffee. We'd sell bags of coffee. So we ended up selling that business in 2013, about a year and a half after we started it. It's a big win for our family. So that was our first business sale. The folks who bought it still run it in Gainesville.
Awesome.
They changed the name, but they do a lot of grocery stuff. They have, you know, it's a pretty big operation now in volume-wise compared to what it was when I sold it. And we moved to Phoenix. My wife got her postdoc at ASU. So I just sold the business, sitting in our rented house.
Yep.
It's right. This is the gift of success, the dearth of dreams and the gift of success. Yeah. I have money in the bank and I don't know what the heck to do with myself. So fast forward a few months, I buy another coffee roaster. I'm doing it again. We started Morning Bell Coffee Roasters in downtown Phoenix. It was amazing.
So you sold a business and didn't carry a non-compete with you.
So in coffee, it's funny. Non-competes really don't exist or stick.
Got it. Okay.
In a lot of ways. And, in this day and age, even, right? Fast forward to today, NDAs, non-competes.
You really can't sign away your rights. I get that.
Yeah, but even then, they, how big is the dollar behind, right? It's one thing if it's a big company that's going to, you have an NCA with. It's another thing if it's a real small mom and pop situation of a normal small business person. That's less of an issue. And it's also because of the bifurcated nature. There's so many small coffee roasters all over the place. Folks I sold it to, they don't care what I'm doing in Phoenix, Arizona.
Absolutely not.
Their market is in Florida.
Well, there's a lot of coffee roasters.
Yes, there were about 1,000 when I started in 2011. There's about 2,000 now. Wow. So the industry's about doubled in that time frame.
It seems like that there may be 2,000 here alone. I mean, there's a lot of folks that try to get into coffee roasting. It just seems that way to me.
It's a sexy business.
Yeah.
But I'll say our model in the coffee industry is Seattle and Portland.
Sure.
A lot of places where you can go, and it's not, coffee roasters on every block, yes, but it's coffee shops in addition to those coffee roasters on every block.
Well, any place there's a large university, there's a large market for coffee.
Right. Sure. So coffee is increasing, and, you're selling sobriety. We had also dreamed when I got into coffee, we dreamed about opening a brewery, and I'm also a homebrew beer guy.
Oh, are you?
Homebrew beer for a long time.
Yeah.
Started doing wine since we came here. I've been making more homemade wine, but I really thought about opening a brewery back in 2011 in Gainesville, where there was not a single brewery. Swamphead was about to open in Gainesville. It was the first one. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know if I can sell that last beer to someone before their DUI.
Right.
I have much better feeling selling the karma of coffee. It's sober, it's fun, right? It's open, it's conversational.
There's plenty of sad stories on Northgate with these bar owners that,
So I like beer, right? But there's a point where I had a hard time selling it. So I'm in Phoenix. We start this Morning Bell Coffee Roasters brand. We had a lot of success. We used to sell at the Phoenix Central Farmers Market. I used to bring everything to the farmers market stall by bicycle.
It's the funnest part of starting the business when it's small, isn't it?
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And all the lessons learned from my first business, I was now able to really dial in what I was doing in all sorts of ways on the roasting side, marketing side. It was great. And we had a very small retail store, 400 square feet, just me, no milk. I could sell you a bag of coffee, but it was literally nothing in there. And, it was a lot of fun.
No milk.
No milk. Absolutely.
That's because I heard this the other day that Starbucks is really in the dairy business more than they are the coffee business.
And the sugar business.
Sugar business, yeah.
It's sugar drinks, right? That's their thing. So my wife got offered the tenure track job at Iowa State, and I really was getting into my trailing spousehood big time there.
From the heat to sub-freezing temperatures.
Yes. But, I'm a very supportive partner. Really want to support my wife and her work.
Yeah.
This is our role as men, to support our wives and working women especially and understand the issues they're going through. I mean, this is the 21st century, so I'm chipping away at the patriarchy myself.
You're all by yourself. There you go.
With the support of all my community, right? But yes, in some ways alone. So
are you playing Mr. Mom at this point in time?
I feel like I always have, but we try to balance that. Yeah. My wife and I really do a good job to try to balance that.
Awesome.
But I do all the cooking. I do all the food shopping.
Well, it seems like you like that is a passion of yours, right? Between making coffee and beer and cooking and being,
Yeah.
It kind of all goes together.
But, you also make enough pasta when you're the cook for a family, right?
Well, that's the best way to feed kids quickly. Yeah.
But it's important work. I feel like, it's important for partnerships to work in that way and to model that for our kids too, right? Because what are we doing at the end of the day? We're modeling the way the world should and could work for our kids. So
I can't tell you that I ever had. I don't think that my dad ever cooked a thing, but I don't think that my mother really cooked much either. I thinking back on it, I think there was a lot of TV dinners, man. Yeah. I
remember a lot of pizza.
Too. A lot of pizza, Domino's, absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah, we're close to the same age here. Yeah.
So in Phoenix, the lesson that I learned, so we had this business, it was going great.
Sure.
My wife gets the call, come to Iowa State, sign for this tenure track job. All right, I got this business growing great. And we're in tight with the folks that have the place we're renting from. So we're renting this really funky spot in a place where there's a lot of these little shops and it's super colorful and there's live music and restaurants and tattoo artists, the whole scene there. So at this point, we're like, we're going to move to Iowa. I'm ready. We're ready to have a coffee shop every day and do a bigger thing. So at this point, we can sell the business. I have folks that are interested in buying this business that I just birthed less than a year ago in Phoenix. And our friends we were renting from came to me and they said, Nadav, we're not going to rent to anybody else that buys the business from you. they're going to have to find another place. So imagine that, right?
What
So
was their motivation?
They had other thoughts. There was a lot of chaos happening at that time, and they later sold all their businesses.
Oh, okay.
Nice folks, actually, but this
Just
was
a loyalty thing to you. Otherwise, they're out.
I don't know what they were thinking so much, but they could have made money, renting to whoever I sold the business to.
Right.
But whatever their reason was. So that was a big lesson to me. Talk about the moments of, right, that you ask in this podcast. What are the turning moments where you have a big turn happening?
So let's look at that a little bit. So just round numbers, not the exact numbers, or let's say percentage wise. Percentage wise, how much were you about to profit from the sale of that business compared to what you'd put into it? Were you a 2X, 3X?
There's something X, probably single digit X, but I didn't calculate it that way.
Yeah.
The way I think about businesses, when I start a business that is serving the community, what is the goal of that business? Is community service.
Okay.
You can't put this. It's a
and were the buyers down with that? They were coming in. Was that their driver?
I think so.
Okay.
They were great folks, and it was. They actually ended up the folks that didn't buy it at the end continued to sell my coffee at that farmer's market for quite a while after. And I was roasting it in my garage in Ames, Iowa, shipping coffee to Phoenix regularly, both to wholesale customers and to those guys that were selling it at the farmer's market. So, it was good vibes. Yeah. Business has to exist on good vibes, especially for me with the coffee business.
It has to motivate you, right? You have to have a why. Everybody has to have their why. Money's going to come and go, but, the job itself many times will carry you.
But if you have good vibes, your customers feel it, all your stakeholders feel it. If you make it just about money, the pot will never be full.
Well, money is just fuel, right? We say that a lot around here. Money's just fuel, but it's not what actually drives the car. Yeah. So, absolutely. So what happened? So
we got this news, right? That the lease will not be renewed to anybody else. So at that point, it was like, crap. I better own the real estate from now on. Okay. There's no way I'm ever renting another place.
Yeah. Lesson learned.
So we moved to Iowa. And right away, I'm like, cool, we got money. I'm ready to buy a commercial building on the historic Main Street in Ames, Iowa, and open my dream coffee business. Perfect. So we get there. And much like now, right, anywhere you go that's cool, there's no for sale signs in any commercial real estate. How do you find the commercial builder? So, if I think about one key handshake, and I know this was on your list of questions.
I want to know that key handshake. What was
the one that I could think of in that context was finding the commercial building. How do you do that? How can you identify commercial properties when there are none for sale?
How did you?
And everything is occupied.
What did you do? Did you start networking your way in? Did you how did you do that?
So yes to networking.
Yeah.
But we're new to town, right? So I arrived 2 weeks. I'm there for 2 weeks.
So are you cold knocking? Are you
riding my bike around, checking out different areas, but also thinking about who I can talk to and trying to network with anybody that we've talked to before.
Yeah.
And also opening up the tax rolls. Researching every individual building.
Right.
Who owns these buildings?
So basically, and I want to reframe this a little bit. So basically, you're prospecting your ability in order to link up to get commercial property. So there's a whole nother. So bring me back here in a minute, right? But what you're doing is really the business development piece, right? Because you're the deal maker, right? You're the deal maker, and that works as much as when you get into the business. But right now, you're looking for the deal. Right.
Looking to buy real estate.
Looking to buy real estate.
And again, because I don't want to rent. I don't want to be at the mercy of what someone else knows with this business. And at the same time, the other wrinkle, Ames, Iowa, 2015, there's no specialty coffee in town.
Really?
Does not exist.
What's the go-to coffee?
So there is local coffee.
Yeah.
Definitely not specialty. At that point, beautiful people, love them to death.
Right.
And these were my competitors, quote unquote, in the years that we were there. But I loved them and they loved me. And in the coffee business, it tends to be chummy.
Yeah.
I'll never go after their customers. If they're another local roaster, I'll never badmouth them. We want the rising of all boats and to have great coffee culture exist anywhere there's specialty coffee. So it was that vibe with them. But at the same time, there was no place to get a specialty coffee experience. So in town right now, you have places like Polite. You also have Carport, which is fabulous. In terms of just feeling what a national level specialty coffee experience can be like. And I think that's a very special thing to have access to. Yeah. So in Ames, Iowa, that did not exist. So when we were opening the shop, I said, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't want to have too big of a build out. I want to start as small as I can.
Yeah.
So anyway, took some networking, took some chatting until I found a guy who might be willing to sell me his building.
The guy. Yeah.
And it took some time for that deal to fall through, come back together. There was a lot of fracas with the real estate. So it took a year when we landed in Ames until I opened the business.
You just twiddling your thumbs during this time, waiting for it to come through?
It was about 6 months of trying to get the building, and once we got the building, to do all the necessary build-out.
All right.
And this was my first full coffee
Permits.
build out.
Yeah.
So I, no contractors, doing it all myself with whoever I could
I
hire.
applaud you. Bootstrapping that thing all the way up.
As much as I can.
Yeah, yeah.
With every business. And,
Wow.
and I learned a lot in that, so much so that later, so anyway, we got this building. It had 2 units, very small unit in the back where we did our first build out, and then a hair salon in the front. Then they were tenants of the building. Great. They were very long-term tenants, very nice people.
Yeah.
They were a little anxious when I bought their building, of course. And I tried to work with them as much as we could when we said, hey, we're going to take over your space. But I also said, I love you. I'm going to give you a year to stay until you can figure out the perfect space.
That's kind of you.
Again, because it's a small town. You can't have bad vibes. It's got to be good karma.
Right.
I don't want people coming to my shop and be like, oh, nice shop, but how'd you screw over these people who are my friends, right?
And I don't see somebody getting their hair done needing a custom cup of coffee at the same time.
Yeah, although we did have some of that crossover. There was some years where they were both open, where I had it open in the back for coffee, and we had a lot of people coming.
They needed their vanilla latte at the same time. Yeah.
It would happen. And, the folks who worked at the salon, they also got plenty of lattes.
I'm sure.
So we learned that experience in terms of the build out, and then we did a much fancier, nicer build out. And I think we finished about a year or 2 before COVID.
Wow.
And a gorgeous build out. Still, if you look up Morning Bell Coffee Roasters, that was the build out. So then we got this opportunity to come to Texas A&M. And in the meantime, I had been talking to my employees about, can't we make this place a workers' cooperative? Guys, don't you want to own this place? Because some of our employees were very interested in unionizing, especially one of our managers named Carrie. I had great conversations with her, and I was like, look, a union is combative by design.
By design.
Why have that? Why don't you guys own the building, or we'll all own it together? Not the building, but the coffee business. So that's what we did. So it took about a year.
So I've got to ask in that, before you go on it, so did that change their viewpoint on what it took in order to run that business?
Yes.
Yes.
So, but imagine you're working at a coffee shop. You're a college student. Let's say you're working at a coffee shop. The boss comes in one day and says, don't you guys want to buy this place for me? And then 6 months later says, oh, I'm quitting. We're going to make it. You guys are going to buy it for me.
Right.
And figuring out all those details. So it was a lot of meetings.
Well, you always wanted to teach business. Here you go. Nothing better than a learning lab, right?
It was amazing. So the business is doing great. It's about 2 years now since the conversion. And, I think workers' cooperatives are an excellent kind of exit strategy for a lot of entrepreneurs that they don't think about in a business sense. Right. It's actually a very beautiful exit strategy. The main reason is...
So I've got to ask you, how did they finance that?
I financed it.
You financed it.
Owner
finance.
Which most business deals are in some degree. So there's nothing different about that.
Yeah.
So I still have skin in the game in that way.
So they all own equity?
No.
No.
So the way a workers' cooperative works is that the equity is held in trust by the community. Nobody owns the equity. Which is one of the reasons why workers' cooperatives can't get a credit card, because there is no owner of equity.
Got it.
And what's beautiful about that too is people can come and go from a workers' cooperative. In the time that you're there, you get a profit share, depending on how it's coordinated. And when you leave, cool, another person come in and get a profit share.
Yep.
So the goal was really to give that place as a gift to the community, that it stays in Ames, Iowa. It's not, my ego that has to continue to run it. It exists as its own thing. And it's really lived up to it.
So you as the seller continue to get that profit share as part of the cooperative.
Well, we gave them a loan.
Okay.
So they're paying off their loan to us. And
got it.
That equity, that in trust for that community is being built up over time.
Well, that's a good way of going.
And, talk about also giving these guys a chance to run the business and how workers run a business different than owners, right?
Sure.
So the average owner, if there's profit left in there, that's mine.
Yeah.
Right? Take that money out of there.
Well, but many times you haven't taken a check the entire time till that's realized.
Well, but ideally, right, once it gets to a point where your business is running and you're paying yourself, when there is excess profit, owners see that excess profit as rightfully their money.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it's a workers' cooperative, workers see that money and say, that's our insurance for when we can't pay ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Workers' cooperatives run their businesses much more conservatively. Wow. They hold a lot more cash. They're a lot more cautious, and it's a very different managerial environment. Is there tax
incentives because it's all about expenses at the end of the year many times. How does it work for them tax-wise?
It's really interesting. So I learned all about subchapter T of the IRS codes. There's a whole cooperative chapter that very few accountants know anything about. So we actually had to identify an accountant that would take us.
Wow.
Because everybody we talked to in Iowa, all our professional help, lawyers, accountants said,
wouldn't touch it.
Yeah, we're not going to support you through this. We don't know anything about this. It's scary, because we were the first one in the state of Iowa to do it. First workers cooperative in the state. So it was a very big deal, and there's some really interesting press that's still out there in the coffee world and otherwise about that transition and what that took. But we really had to find support outside of the state to help us do it.
Wow.
And bring in a lot of folks. And that was great. We found a lot of great help, and it was possible to do it. And for me, it just feels like such a win-win, right?
Sure.
I am happy as an entrepreneur leaving the business.
Yeah.
My employees are happy. The community I left is happy. It's all good vibes. And that's what really counts.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're here.
So that's the thing. So this is my dream, right?
Yeah.
I always had this dream of teaching business. So I get the opportunity to come to Texas A&M, teach business.
Yep.
And what a trip. It's a midlife career change.
Yeah.
Here I am in my mid-40s doing something that who's prepared to do this? Who's prepared to get up in front of 150 18 to 20-year-olds and talk about management, right?
Yeah, with a lot of blank stares many times that you have to convert over knowledge. Yeah, that's kind of hard.
So I really lean into my entertainer experience.
Sure.
Right? You got to make it a party.
Pump them up.
And have active learning, but I've really embraced learning about teaching.
Yeah.
And having it be a great continuum of all my efforts and all my work. And it's been great.
So tell us more about your focus in the teaching. What is it that you're exactly teaching right now that drives you?
So I teach the agribusiness management course, which I like to think of it as an MBA in a semester. So I really talk about all the business functional areas.
Oh, do you?
Talk about preparing students to be in the working world.
Yeah.
We do a lot of current events business stuff. We listen to the NPR Marketplace podcast.
Yeah.
We do a lot of stuff to get folks prepared because there's some agricultural economics students in there, but there's also other students from the Ag College. So we get folks from animal science, from plant science. It's a required course for them. So I've been teaching that course for a while, and that's a lot of fun. Great course. And I also get to teach the marketing capstone course for the agribusiness program.
Okay.
And that's a great cohort. These are folks that it's harder to get into the agribusiness program. It's kind of selective. And this is their last course in their marketing sequence. And we get to basically create new product and service ideas is what I drive them to do. So day one, they come into class, say, students, let's dream about a product or service that doesn't exist right now that you wish or you can imagine might exist in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And let's plan out a whole marketing plan for that and see how we get there. And then they present those plans to the class.
That's great.
It's a party.
Yeah. How many of those students take what they've learned and come back and give you success stories?
Hard to know because I'm so new at it.
Oh, okay.
But I get a lot of love and I get a lot of good vibes back from my students.
We just hired Grant here, and Grant's...
So tell the story of Grant because you can tell that better than I can.
Well,
this side.
he's pretty new. But the thing about Grant is he came in here and, this town is in no way bougie, right? So you're not going to have madmen walking in this place, right? And many times when you think about a marketing firm, for some reason, I guess it has to do with television, that people have this idea in their head that everybody's walking around in suits and pitching some BS out there about how you're going to sell something, which just doesn't happen. But I will tell you that Grant did come in looking like 007, right? He was prepared. And not only was he prepared, he was professional. And, A&M puts out a really good product. There's just no doubt. And he's getting in the swing of things. And I think that, I'm not speaking for him, but I think he's figuring out that marketing is work. It's real work, right? It's mentally exhausting, physically exhausting. And by the end of the day, you've done a whole lot of moving and shaking. And especially if you've got 5 or 6 accounts that you're doing the work on, there's plenty of work to go around on that, right? And what's funny is because the young people here are figuring out that the life of that business, to a very big extent, because marketing and sales are always inevitably related, is riding on whether or not we're doing our job correctly.
Well said.
And that is, as you start to look at that, but that light does come on. Isn't that right, Ryan? Eventually that pressure comes up and you're in a meeting and they say, hey, we've had 200% growth and we want to thank you for that. And you're like, wow, did I have something to do with that? Yeah. I'm just a small little gadget, little wheel in this big old cog, man. I'm trying to move this thing through, but I had no idea that it would have that effect.
It's amazing. Yeah, so Grant was one of my star students this past spring who just graduated and has now landed here at Fidelis. So that's, he's really a pretty amazing guy. And
he is. We have amazing people here. In fact, the very first, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, the very first employee, Josh, right? Josh, graduated from Mays. came in here, and there was one caveat. He asked for a desk, and they turned around and said, all right, we were in a garage at that point in time. All right, here's money, go build yourself one. And he did, right? So we knew at that point in time the chassis that was in that young man. And but the same thing's true with all the men and women that are here. They just, man, it has that same ability, because this is a busy place. It's a lot of fun, right? It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, it's work.
Fast moving is the way that it should be. I think that you get a lot when it's fast moving that keeps it fun and entertaining to come to work.
Well, I think it's also really, and with Grant and others, to understand the differences. We do have some B2C work here, there's no doubt, but we're more focused on that B2B play, where you start getting $100 million businesses. There's no digital marketing in the world that's going to drive your top line. It's just not going to do it. There's a trust play. There's getting through the noise play. There's a number of things you've got to get into there, and teaching these young people how that goes is awesome. It's
B2B is so much harder,
I
think, than the B2C in
all sorts of ways. Way harder.
Having had businesses in both of them,
right?
Once you skin your teeth on B2B, B2C is like, oh, I got this.
Oh, they clap. Every time it's a B2C, they're like, yes, the easy job. And because some people will argue that B2B in marketing doesn't work, but we've shown that it can. You just have to know how to use your tools.
Well, I think that my answer to that would be, well, you didn't know all the marketing you were doing. You didn't see
That's right.
all the ways you put yourself out there.
That's right.
And I tell my students all the time, marketing is business.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares what's going on behind you, right? Nobody cares who's, riding the bike and moving the gears and turning the cogs. There's some percentage of customers that don't care. All they're buying is you,
right,
and what you're doing. And and so I talk about outsourcing, right, as an idea. Because any business that you have, you should know what it would be like to outsource it in your mind. What are the pluses and minuses that you're getting by not outsourcing?
Absolutely. Hey, so I want to get your take on something, right? So there's an ensuing, not argument, but conversation that is going on here, because I have come to the premise with B2B, when it is a multi-million-dollar company, because let me go back. In marketing, we love to go, hey, we're going to measure that.
Oh, of course.
We're going to measure that. No, don't worry. Oh, and then some marketing companies go in and say, hey, don't worry, we're going to sell you 2 million impressions. Really? What did that do for you? We're going to measure that. Okay, great. So, and in fact, I'll give Ryan some kudos on this, because he articulates it well, is that we really think cost of customer acquisition and also looking at top-line revenue are really the only two numbers that can dictate whether or not your B2B marketing is working. If you're going to measure, and we have to have measure, I need to know how much it cost me to acquire a client and how much that went up, right? Because at the end, no matter how you do it, if you have a Macy's Day Balloon that carries your brand and you see top-line revenue go up, measure how that worked together, right? It's really hard to do. And so as you go through, but if you can look at acquisition numbers and you can also look at top-line revenue growing, now here's what we play with. And we've played with it internally. Just think for a second, if you do shut down your marketing for a month, look what happens to that incoming revenue. And you'll see that immeasurable is now really measurable, right? What happened? So, yeah, man, a sign of a business with no sign is a sign of no business. Get ready for it. We got to keep moving. But, yeah, that B2B play and letting young people come in and start to see that tertiary effect that happens of when you put money into marketing, all of a sudden that dollar you put in is a great investment when it brings you 2 or 3 more, right? Kind of where we are. What's your thoughts?
So I hesitate to talk about my marketing strategies of what I used to roll with in my businesses.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're ideal, but I think they worked for me. Sure. And I think that you could frame this to your audience as this is what it's like if you don't do it, right? Because I think at the end of the day, if you're in the marketing business and you're selling a marketing service, what's your competition? Right? What are your clients choosing if they don't choose you? That's what I would want to talk about with my clients.
Many times it's nothing, right?
That's it.
Yeah, that's true.
So what is that nothing? How do you quantify that nothing? And I speak as a guy that I always say, I have never spent $1 on marketing. Never spent $1 on marketing. That doesn't include my build out.
Right.
That doesn't include my signs, right? Or any of the other stuff that I've done.
Yeah.
But like that I don't expend money on any ads or any external
What you're saying is you're
marketing.
not spending $1 on Meta.
Yeah. So what does that mean though? Functionally for a business is your reach is small.
Right.
Cool. I was in Ames, Iowa, on a main street that, like, the Bryan downtown is 5 times the size of the Ames downtown. You know, it's a
I don't know
village.
what to say about that. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a village.
Yeah.
We had 3 blocks, right? And we
Sure.
were like, you know, it's the top 3 metro in Iowa. Think
Wow.
about that, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a very
So at that
small
point in time,
environment.
it's not a volume play. So you have to match
You
your
have to
marketing
match
efforts
your
to your
investment
market.
and your. So, you know, we did a lot of really creative signs. I would have my baristas for a while hand draw signs every week with all silly stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the ones that stuck, we had permanently painted on signs. And the best one that still people love, it's a beautiful kind of sandwich board sign in front of the shop, and it says, "We're not that special." So self-deprecating, marketing, but also art. So we had, you know, lots of art changing in our shop every month. I was on the board of the Arts Council in Ames, and that was a beautiful thing. And we would have different artists putting up their art every month, and we had a beautiful mural done in our building. So, you know, really having that connection with art brings in more people too.
I mean, that's the beauty of small business, right? You can do things you love and that are really cool in order to bring folks in. That's really neat.
And I think some of that magic needs to rub off on larger businesses too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and I think that having art, the connection to art is, you know, a lot of folks miss that.
Yeah.
But I think that, if I were in your shoes, it's like, what is the cost of doing nothing? What are we competing against here?
Yeah.
Because the magic of good marketing can be pretty magical.
Can be pretty magical. So your students, as they're going through that, and they're going through that exercise, what's the hardest part for them?
It's really interesting. I think the hardest part that I like to model for them, and that I've had to temper a little bit, is the open-ended nature of it and the chaos, right? And for a lot of students, they want things that are measurable. Like, how do I get an A? What are the things I need to do on this rubric?
Right.
So when I came in, I was like, what is a rubric? When I went through college, there were no rubrics. You know, so there was a lot of learning for me coming back to the classroom after almost 20 years of not being in it to figure that out. But coming from the business world, I'm used to that chaos and uncertainty.
Right.
You know, and I think modeling that for students is hard, and really getting them ready for work, right?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a huge chasm between graduating, right? Like, look what Grant's done. That chasm is huge. So I want to make them as prepared as I can to show up and be ready to get into the chaos on day one.
I had in grad school, I had a professor who was from India. Man, was he smart, and just really worldly, knew his stuff. And one day. He came to me and he asked me how long until I was done, and I said, I'm 3 classes away. And he said, you know the difference between those of you in the West that go to school and those that come from India? And I said, what? He said, you count how many hours till you're done, and we count how many classes until we understand. You know, and that whole the college pathway has gotten so expensive these days that people are trying to get the fastest route to get the piece of paper, but that doesn't always mean that you leave. Sometimes it's that first job that really has to teach you, right?
Yeah, and I like to frame it for my students. What are you doing in college? What's the point of doing this?
Right.
Learning how to learn.
Yep.
All you're doing is prepping your brain to learn more. Drink from the fire hose, right? And trying to get folks to be intellectually curious. Yeah. I always want to talk about, fun books to read. Not like we were chatting before, and it was like these business books.
These business self-help books kill me. I'm just like, no.
I'm not into them. I'm really into humanist science fiction. I really like to dream about. So Kim Stanley Robinson, Ursula K. Le Guin, and these, you think about science fiction having a window into the future of technology, right? This is the future of the world of work, how we interact as people in a working environment. Writers dreaming about that. Amazing. So a lot of my inspiration for the whole workers' cooperative conversion idea came from Kim Stanley Robinson's books. Okay. So I give them a lot of credit. And they're amazing books, so fun to read. But I'm a nerd for books. And I think that having that intellectual curiosity, the best students we can be, it's a lifelong student situation. We always have to be drinking from that fire hose. We always have to be humble enough to know that we don't know everything. Right? These are the folks.
More we've got to figure out better ways. But yeah, absolutely. So you're teaching, you're doing the portion that comes to the marketing. What else are you teaching? What is the
other work that I've really gotten into at A&M, which has been terrific for me, is A&M has like one of the top, if not the top, coffee research and education center in the country. Yeah. So Rodrigo Chavez from What's the Buzz is involved with it. And there's amazing folks doing that work. So I've been able to do some service over there and start getting involved with what's happening in the coffee center.
That may end up being some good travel for you, man. They go some cool places.
There has been. So I just led a study abroad a couple weeks ago to France on an agribusiness trip to France. And right now, signups are still open for students who want to join me in Costa Rica in January.
Now there's the place, right?
To go visit coffee farms and pick with coffee pickers, learn about fermentation and processing, and do it on the ground in Costa Rica during the picking season. So I'm going to get to do more trips like that.
Yeah, living the good life there.
And I'm also going to get to teach a new coffee class, which I'm really excited about, a coffee value chain class.
Great.
And I'm going to be teaching it in the spring for the first time. And there's going to be more educational pushes coming on the coffee front at A&M.
And what's that center called?
So it's the Center for Coffee Research and Education. It's in the Borlaug Center.
Borlaug. It's in Borlaug. There you go. I knew that.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I've been able to go with them and represent A&M at the last Specialty Coffee Association conference and reconnect with a lot of my stakeholders in my businesses with the 10 years that I was in specialty coffee.
Yeah.
So it's been a really
and hang
fun
out
time.
with Rodrigo.
Rodrigo didn't come with us on that trip. He hasn't gone to SCA that year, but I have gotten to hang out with Rodrigo.
He is doing some scaling of his businesses at this point in time. So, you know.
He has some challenging stuff going on right now.
He does.
Yeah. So it's always a moving target, but he's a very warm guy. I really like Rodrigo, and he gives a lot of himself to the coffee side.
Oh, he does. That dude's passionate about coffee, right? Passionate. Yeah.
So the other thing that I'm really passionate about is volunteering. So before I got invited to give a talk at A&M to get a job here, before that, I had been volunteering as an instructor for inmates to entrepreneurs. So it's a national entrepreneurship training for folks who are judicially involved, either currently in prison or just got out of prison.
Wow, how did you get into that?
So I read an article that there was someone in the coffee business that was doing it through the coffee press, and I said, bam, I got to get into that. And I've really networked with some amazing people, made some great friends through that world, and I continue to volunteer with them. I have a few classes coming up this fall.
Awesome.
And that really fills my bucket. And then here in town, I started volunteering with REACH. I don't know if you've heard about the REACH project, but it's a former A&M student named Max that he started a nonprofit helping essential workers on campus, food service workers, janitors, and really trying to help them open businesses, get health care, figure out how to get them out of the cycle of generational poverty.
Right.
So I've been able to already teach one class in entrepreneurship, and I have a few others coming up.
Which is really the
elements.
answer.
And talk about a party. To be able to do it in person, in class with these folks is just so fun. So I really encourage my students to volunteer. I encourage other folks in the community who don't volunteer. There's something magic about showing up and being in the room with people and hanging out.
So what's your wisdom when it comes to being an entrepreneur? So, we talk about it a lot here. It may be because I lean that direction, but you've obviously been successful, but we know it's not easy. So what's the magic? What leads you to be successful?
So what I tell my students is that I'm very lucky because I grew up seeing this every day. I grew up in a family that had businesses, still does. So it was easy.
A way of life.
For me, it was easy to do it because I could see that happens. For folks that grow up and their parents work for other people, they don't see that at all. And for them, it's much harder to visualize what the issues are.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Which
is a business book, and it's not self-help. It is a good one to read, but go ahead.
Good.
Yeah.
So I think that's a biggie. So I tell the folks that don't have that experience, hey, just know it's going to be harder. You're going to need more mentoring, more help to even visualize yourself doing it.
Yeah.
I think otherwise I often tell folks to fail small, give themselves the grace to fail small, and figure out if entrepreneurship is right for them.
Yeah, you just said the key term, figure it out. Figure it out. The thing that most people I find as I come around, this is even the business owners as a whole, they have this innate ability, many times, this isn't 100%, but to make the really hard choice to do the right thing and then figure it out as they move their feet. Now that is not the W-2 world, right? So you have to be able to have that get across the ice, just gusto to be able to get that done, right? And that's tough.
It's a lot of spinning plates.
That's right.
You got to be able to spin a lot of plates on your hands at the same time.
Absolutely.
And, if that fills your bucket, gets you jazzed to have that kind of activity, then you've found your calling, right? It's a beautiful thing as an entrepreneur.
If it makes you sick in your stomach, you better be careful because it only gets worse. Yeah. Or better in your case. So what did you fail at? What have you failed at? Because it seems like you've been successful with everything you're doing.
It sounds cheesy, but I think I have failed at if I've failed at anything, right? Looking at me, right? And I think a lot of, you never know how others look at you, right? As an individual, you don't know how the world sees you. You can never fully comprehend that.
Yeah.
But I think for me personally, I like to think that I fail at not dreaming big enough. Today, every day, in my past, in general, right? It's like, what else could I have done or could be doing?
Right.
And we all have to sit with that, right? And that's why I really encourage my students, dream big.
Yeah.
Have a few dreams. Do some that are attainable, but dream big, because we all need purpose. Sure. And I think that for a lot of young people, that's what's lacking right now in our country and in our world, is that a lot of young people don't see that purpose and have that drive. And I think for our parents' generation, right, as a Gen Xer, think about my parents' generation or older generations, they didn't have that problem. They had to work their butts off just to get food on the table.
They had the opposite problem, right? Our parents had the opposite problem. And here's the opposite problem. When you asked your parents how they were doing, they told you what they had accomplished at work, right? Now so there's two extremes here. One thing is dream big, get it done, have fun. But the other thing is remember why you're working.
Yeah.
Right. But it was so funny. The other day, I ran into a person and they were telling me the 3 indicators of a Gen Xer. Right. Do you know what those are?
Tell me.
Number 1 is just what I said. When you ask your parents what they did, how their day was, they told you how well they did at work. Number 2, if everybody in the room, all their parents are divorced, you're a Gen Xer, right? Because that's inevitably what happened. And point number 3 is you can remember the day when MTV hit. So now they're judging Gen Xers. Hey, we stayed up for 24 hours waiting for the fuzz to go away, right? The snow on the screen because MTV. And I don't think we turned it off for another 20 years, right? But, those things happen, man, and we can remember. But you're right. Dream big. Yeah.
But I think from the marketing sense, thinking about the folks that you talk to who need a marketing business, marketing help, that are looking for direction in there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do I think about your customers? They need purpose. Find a way to give purpose to all the people.
You have to talk directly to that customer profile. There's no doubt.
And there's like dog training. Give them a job, right? A dog that's sitting there pensive without a job. Yeah. We're the same way. We need a job.
Absolutely.
And some of us need more structure, like those who are attracted to the military way of life, Chris.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're a sucker for structure in some ways, or you've enjoyed structure.
I think, we have CT in here who owns Cleaner, who's a client of ours. And I think it just depends what you do in the military, but overall, I would agree with you. Yeah, but overall, I would agree with you. So
being an entrepreneur by its nature is unstructured.
Yeah.
Right? When you are the boss, everybody tells you you're doing a freaking awesome job and that your vision is amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that can be hard for people too.
Well, and most people don't understand entrepreneurism. But, so what did you fail at? Just not dreaming big enough? Was there a moment in time when you were in your businesses where you said, I need to tell everybody to never do this?
A moment that was really tough, I'd reframe an answer there, was COVID.
Yeah, how'd you get through that?
Holding the bag during COVID.
Yeah.
So like I was saying earlier, right, when you're a business owner, all that profit that's in your bank account, that's your money.
Uh-huh.
So the day COVID hit, there wasn't much money in the bank account.
No.
There's a lot more payroll leeway that had to.
Did you stay up at night wondering how you were going to make payroll?
It was the scariest couple weeks I've ever had.
Right.
And, my employees, they're family, right?
Yeah.
Like they depend on me to pay them so they can pay rent.
Right.
So they can pay their credit card bill and do everything they need to do, right? So when you take an employee, you take that on. So it was a very difficult time.
Right.
And I really credit our customers to stepping up and voting with their wallets to keep Morning Bell Coffee Roasters alive through that time.
Yeah.
And we had to go from the door. We had home delivery of coffee beans. We changed the business model immediately.
Go leave the coffee on the front stoop.
We did
knock
that
on
all
the
the
window
time.
and leave.
Yeah, bags of coffee. Yeah, and it was
wow.
It was great. But that, I don't know if I'd say that as a failure, but that was a tough time.
Oh yeah.
That was a really scary time
for all of us. Right? Things just change. The world changed. But I love to ask this question too, and it'll be my last question, I promise. So in this pathway, did you have a mentor or a key handshake that happened that really set your path and that gave you the fortitude to be able to do what you've done?
Such a good question. My parents were both still alive and amazing. Barbara and Ben give them so much credit. They are really my primary mentors.
That's awesome.
Through my business journey. One of their tenets of business, which is really interesting, is they learned they can't have any employees. No employee business. So when I started my battery backup business, I didn't have any employees. So once I started in coffee, right, pretty quickly, I had to have employees once it grew.
Yeah.
So at that point on, I was really kind of growing out of my shell in that way. A lot of the times, the questions and the answers from them were less appropriate, and I kind of grew into new mentors, which are my in-laws.
Okay.
Ken and Robin, both of them former professors, now retired at University of Florida. So they have been my academic mentors in addition to my wife to really help me be prepared for this midlife transition that I've done to academia.
Yeah.
So, you know, finding the appropriate mentors at the right time in your life is super important.
I like that midlife transition phrase. I use midlife crisis in my own life, but yeah.
No, it was call it a crisis or not, but a career transition.
It's not really a crisis. It's just, hey, from one season to another.
Yeah, and are you crying, you know, inside the house privately, or are you crying in front of 150 people?
Yeah.
Because I'd rather cry in front of 100, right?
Well, I tell you, I didn't do the red Corvette. You know, we haven't done anything crazy around here. But I tell you that there is a truth where you start to see, hey, I want to do something different. I've been doing the same thing for 30 years. I've finished this path. It's time for a change. But yeah.
How are you doing with that?
Oh, man, I'm good. But then again, you can ask these folks around here. I'm a little bit of a free spirit anyway, right? And always have been. And but that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But it happens. You know, you see that world for what it is. And so when you get to your mid-50s and you start looking the other direction, you have a lot more behind you than you have in front of you. And so, you know, live it to the fullest. This life is but a whisper, man. And make sure that you're living big.
It's great.
But we've always done that. We've always done that.
It's great. Every day is a gift is what
That's
I like
right.
to think about.
I'm thankful for every day. But it is really awesome, once again, around here because everybody's youthful but me. And so, but I don't know it till I look in the mirror. So it's been a great thing. Yeah. Okay, so I lied to you. One more question. So how do you define success?
I really think about success in non-monetary terms.
Right.
And this is how I like to also talk to my students about it. When do you know you're successful, right?
Right.
So if you put yourself out there, if you're 18 or 22 right now, right? And you start working, when do you hit it? When are you successful? What are the milestones that feel like success to you?
Because when you hit, 100% growth in your business, guess what? It's not enough.
And you create new problems.
That's right.
You know, if you grow too fast, too much, all of a sudden you need to hire more people.
Yeah.
You might need a new facility. So you need to right-size the business to your life too, which always really kept my growth in check. I wanted a business that was the perfect size that I could manage.
And you can spend with your kids. I mean, work hard. We got to work hard every day. You know, that's just the way it is.
So at some point, you can't eat more money.
That's right.
You know, there's a limit. So I always try to, for myself, success is connecting with people, spending time with people, hopefully having some positive influence on the world and on those people. And that's why academia has been so fun. Because what am I doing? I'm hanging out with impressionable young folks. Some of them even listen to my words.
Winning hearts and minds, yeah.
You know, but it's a party, right?
Some of them.
But by and large, it's a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed that.
Good. Well, we appreciate you being here.
Pleasure is all mine.
We love your story, man. It's going to be great. Pass it out. Let people know. Yeah, because that we need more of that, right? That's what it's all about. What's funny is, even though I don't think you've communicated it, both you and Rodrigo have a very similar story, man. Y'all are compadres for sure. I think y'all would really get along well, man. It's very similar, but not just the coffee piece, but how you got to where you are. Yeah,
it's fascinating.
Well, thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.